Brother, I'm going run a wild Hulk Hogan. If all I get's a moment, I'll make sure it's an explosion. Cause lately I've been seeing stars, trying to kick out of this chokehold. But it's no holds barred, middle fingers like I'm Stone Cold.
What is up, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Slapping Me to Wrestling podcast. We're here. We're doing the Fastlane review show. Just got done watching it, and we're here to break it down. Please remember, as always, my reviews of these shows will not be, Dave Meltzer-esque, where I have 18 pages of notes per match where I go sequence by sequence what happens. Will not happen. That's not happening at all. And so we're going to go match by match. We'll talk about the result of the match. We'll talk about where I think it goes, what I thought of the match overall, but we're not breaking this thing down minute by minute, right? So let's jump right on into it. Let's start with the pre-show. I don't know if a lot of people watched the pre-show in and of itself. Not a lot happens on the pre-show, but with this individual pre-show, you have Jade Cargill show up on the pre-show, met by Triple H, shakes his hand, walks off. That's all we get of Jade Cargill. So here's my question to the community. Is this a proper way to introduce the world to Jade Cargill, right? She looked good. She looked like $1 million, and she got to get sort of greeted to the company by Triple H, and sort of walked into the show by Triple H. Is this how you bring in who's being promoted as like the best free agent signing in recent wrestling history, or whatever Michael Cole said, right? Is this how you do it? I don't know how else you do it. I sent a picture of Jade when she was on the screen. I took a picture of it on my TV and sent it to my more AEW-esque friends who weren't watching tonight, and said, "Oh man, this looks beautiful." Just as a joke. And I got a reply back from one of them and says, "So you pulled out the red carpet on a C+ or C tier pay-per-view. Yeah, what a way to bring in a big signing." Is that just them being jealous? Like, in a way, I can see where they're coming from, right? You have Fastlane, and this is where you debut a big star, right? I've always felt with Jade, right? I know why you're pushing her to the main roster. I think she's ready. I know a lot of the AEW fans are going to say she's not ring ready. She's still, she's a botch machine. She's still green. All of these things. I get that. The AEW fans would say that. I don't necessarily believe all of that. I think WWE is going to do everything they can to protect her from looking bad, right? But is there not a better way to sort of introduce her to the crowd rather than just, hey, she's a big time free agent and here she is getting out of the car, right? Is there a better way? Would there have been a better way for you to be introduced to Jade? I know they really want to do this Becky Lynch versus Tegan Nox match, but you can really play into this and build a character out of Tegan Nox. Every time they announce a match, something happens. And you know what the next thing that could happen is? She gets attacked by Jade Cargill, right? Imagine if, Tegan Nox was backstage, just walking the backstage, walking in let's just say she was in catering, sort of just talking to the rest of the roster and talking about, oh, I can't wait till Monday. I'm finally going to get my opportunity. I'm not going to get passed up this time. And then Jade walks in and just like puts her through a fucking table and says, you're going to have to wait in line. Becky, I'm facing you on Monday. And that's right. And that's the introduction that we get to Jade Cargill. That's how I would have done it. Right. And then Monday, Jade Cargill comes out and beats Becky Lynch for the NXT Women's Championship. And then she runs all three brands. Right. We do the crossover, right? Where she's on Raw, she's on NXT. I'd even put her on SmackDown. And what I do with that is then set up a feud between her and Charlotte Flair for the NXT Women's Championship. Right? If you really want to, like I've always said, this NXT is a third brand. It's no longer developmental. And I understand the sort of comeback where it's like, well, it's not presented as it's on the same level. You want to put it on the same level? Right? Continue this crossover. These crossovers are fantastic. Right? Crossovers make TV shows, right? Especially if it's like, these are TV shows, right? So Raw is its own show. NXT is its own show. SmackDown is its own show. And when you get a crossover, right? If you watch TV like I do, right? CBS is known to have, like, for example, NCIS, right? It has NCIS Los Angeles, which actually just got canceled, and then NCIS Hawaii were the three that ran last season. Right, next season, whenever they fucking are able to put out a new season, it's going to be NCIS and NCIS Hawaii, right? But and then they also have the FBIs, FBI Most Wanted, FBI International, right? And for both of those shows, NCIS and FBI, they always start the new season with a 3-hour crossover event, right? And it's a way to introduce all three shows at the same time to get viewership for all three shows, right? And I think WWE can do that, right? Where you could do a crossover for all of these events, and having Jade Cargill come in, immediately look like a badass, knock out Tegan Knox out of the picture and say, bitch, I'm here, get out of my way, beat Becky Lynch on her debut match, and then cross over to SmackDown, cross over to Raw, be on NXT, set up a feud with someone like Charlotte for like Royal Rumble or WrestleMania, and make NXT feel important that Charlotte Flair's coming down to face your champion. And let Jade just run that division. Give her the women's championship for NXT. I don't see a problem with that. Let me know what y'all think about that idea. But you got to do something better than just have her get out of a car and walk into the event. Because that's all she did. That doesn't tell, if I didn't know who she was, if I had never watched AEW before, and I didn't know who she was, you didn't tell me enough about why she is so incredible that she signed with WWE. And what it basically came down to is that WWE assumed that the crowd watching knew who she was. And you can't do that. You can't do that when you're, if you're trying to get a mainstream audience, right? If you're trying to get people who only watch WWE, which there are a lot of people in the audience who probably had no idea who Jade Cargill is. Right? You can't just sort of assume to the mainstream sort of casual crowd that people knew who Jade Cargill was. Right? You have to give me a reason to actually care about her. And just having her walk out of the car, shake Triple H's hand, and walk into the arena, to me, that's not cutting it. Right? To me, that's not cutting it. To me, that's a little bit of a letdown, where you could have had her come in, make a statement tonight by, like I said, literally, it could have been a 30-second segment where she walks in the catering, where you could have like Candice LeRae, Tegan Knox, Alba Fire, Isla Dawn, so some of the more unused talent on the Raw roster sort of just talking, and they're pumping up Tegan like, oh, we can't wait to your match on Monday. And then Jade walks in and says, excuse me, bitches, I'm here. I'm the main bitch right now. Tegan, we're either going to do this the easy way or the hard way. Let me have your spot. And, and then Tegan be like, no, I've earned this. And then she goes through a fucking table, and the other people surrounding her run away before they go through a table, and Jade takes the spot, right? And she comes in and makes herself the badass that she's being promoted as being. And then she beats Becky Lynch and runs NXT, as well as crossing over to the other brands where she could set up a feud with Bianca or Charlotte or Raquel or whoever you want her to set up a feud with. Right? I think that would have been a better way to introduce her rather than just having her get out of the car and walk into the arena. Let me know what you guys think on that. Let's get to the actual card. So we start with the tag team championship match between Judgment Day and Cody Rhodes, or versus Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso, where I start 0-1 in my predictions because Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso won the tag team championship. Now, at first, I was like, not feeling this, right? When I made my prediction video, my thought was, I'm not digging this, putting the title on two random people who have not tagged before. Now, I don't know where this is going. I really don't. I don't know. Either way, they have to do something with these tag belts. They have to, because the tag division's just, and I'm not the biggest fan of tag team wrestling, but you have to appease the people who like it, and you're just not doing it. Creating random tag teams, having the belts stay on one on the same tag team with two belts, having two belts be carried, it's just not working. You have to split the belts. You have to put one on Raw, one on SmackDown, so that there's some sort of continuity. I don't even know if that's the right word that I'm looking for, but you have to have some sort of flow to make these teams feel important, because you got teams like LWO and the Profits and I can't even think of any other tag teams on SmackDown, to be honest, but you got tag teams in this division that really have nothing left to do because there's no belt to fight for. So you have to split them up. And I think this is a good way to do it. Part of me just wonders, though, if they gave Cody the belt because he's going to be there Tuesday and it's going to make it feel important and people are going to tune in and watch. I didn't hate the match. I didn't really necessarily hate the result. You could definitely tell there was a story being played within the Judgment Day itself. JD sort of costing Damian Priest the match, and ultimately the team the match by hitting JD with the briefcase or the belt inadvertently. I don't remember what he got hit with, and costing like messing up that whole sequence that Damian was getting ready to set up, right? And basically costing the team the match. That's definitely, I believe, going to get brought up. I think Judgment Day is about to split up ultimately. And yeah, I just don't know where else we really take Judgment Day as a team. And where I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm just not looking forward for the next month and a half of build of Cody, Sammy, Kevin, Jay, and that's if Kevin's even involved, but Cody, Jay, Sammy, Cena, LA Knight, it's probably going to be team face, and then team heel will be Judgment Day, Jimmy, and Solo. I'm assuming that'll be the SummerSlam team. Or not SummerSlam, Survivor Series, the Survivor Series teams. And I'm not really looking forward to that build for the next month and a half of them doing literally the same thing, right? So ultimately, the match itself, we can give it a B. It wasn't like the best thing ever, but it definitely wasn't like mid. It was a decent way to start the show. But then you move into LWO versus Bobby Lashley and the Profits, and we're being sort of hyped up on LWO's getting in a third member. And remember, in my prediction, I said I'm picking the Profits and Bobby Lashley just off of because that's who I thought should win the match. But depending on the third person, if it's someone like Dragon Lee or Carlito, that LWO's winning. And so they ring the bell, and it's a 2-on-3 match. And it's 2-on-3 for literally all but like a minute and a half. And the way they presented Carlito, it made no sense. Why couldn't he come out for the whole match? Like what it would have hit the same had he, what my thought was that they were going to play it out and the ref was going to wait and sort of talk to him and be like, "Are you sure you want to go at it 2-on-3?" And then the music will play, right? And I don't know necessarily. I hope they give a reason why it took him literally all match to get out there, other than I don't even know what the reason would be. And so, yeah, I just wasn't a big fan of how this was presented. I'm also not a big fan of the result. The Street Profits and Bobby Lashley need wins. This is what I'm talking about, right? We need to have, like, Carlito coming back. He can't afford to take a loss, right? He can afford to take the loss, whereas the Profits and Lashley building this new team, they need wins. They need to look strong. And it makes no sense. These guys, like Lashley's one of the strongest motherfuckers in the company, and you got an athletic motherfucker with Montez Ford, and then you got Dawkins. They should have beat the shit out of LWO. They should have ran the floor. If Carlito wasn't going to be out there to start the match, they should have beat the holy shit out of them. Right? But it didn't happen, and they sort of just got sort of exposed, and I hate how WWE does this, because you have an opportunity to build a legitimate faction, but instead you have them lose, and now their credibility is completely gone. Right? They lost to LWO. LWO needs to be a faction to get Santos. The goal for LWO needs to be to get Santos Escobar over to where he can leave the group and be a superstar on his own, and they put over other factions. Right? I don't like LWO coming in here and winning the match, especially with the booking of, we're going to wait to literally the last like minute and a half of the match to get Carlito out there. And then you change the song. And so the pop wasn't as big because no one knew who the fuck's music it was, right? Whether or not, like, and I, when we talked about on the pod a couple of weeks ago, when we talked about like best, there was a community question. It was like, what's the best entrance music or whatever, right? And I mentioned, like, I'm not the biggest fan of like caring about music, but it's still important, because a lot of times when you're paying attention to the match, when you get sort of a run in, the music is what helps you. Because a lot of times when you see a guy running into the ring, if there was no music, it would take a minute to figure out who it is, right? Even with the music. Like, if you're just basing it off of who it is, a lot of the people look the same. And so it's the music that makes them recognizable. And so to change Carlito's song and not have the "I spit in the face of people who don't want to be cool," right? That is what people recognize with Carlito. You could change the music after that, but the catchphrase is what gets the pop. It's the same thing with Edge at AEW, right? Granted, he did use Metalingus, but the "you think you know him," right? It was, first off, if you don't know why they changed it, WWE owns the phrase "you think you know me," and they own that was edited into the song just for WWE, so they did have to change it. "You think you know him," which I think is actually pretty stupid. But right, it's the same thing with Edge. Like Edge kept his music because that is what he's recognized by. Right? If he would have come out with some new song that no one had ever heard before, the pop wouldn't have been the same. Right? And so the same thing with Carlito. If you would have just done the I spit in the face of people who don't want to be cool, and then you played the new song, that still would have been fine because people would have popped at the catchphrase, right? And so yeah, this match it was pretty mid. It was exactly what I expected it to be. And then when Carlito came out, it was such a anticlimactic part of the match. It didn't really mean much. Right, when they started the match and LWO just started getting the crap beat out of them, I was thinking to myself, yeah, LWO's winning this match because Carlito's going to come out, make like we've seen this before, right? It's standard WWE stuff, right? LWO is going to get the crap beat out of them. They're going to look like they're about to lose. Carlito's going to come out, get the tag, make the win, right? Right? So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm just not a big fan of this result. The Profits and Lashley really needed this a lot more. The only way they could sort of salvage this is to have Lashley go to Dawkins and Ford and be like, y'all don't got that killer instinct. And while I'm talking about it, Dawkins, this gimmick doesn't fit Dawkins. And you can tell, I think it's a struggle for him because there's still moments where he's smiling, right? And I get you could still sort of have him be the happy-go-lucky, like party guy. And maybe that's what they're trying to do is kick Dawkins out of the group. I hope not, because if Dawkins gets removed from Ford, he's probably going to get released. I'm going to be completely honest. There's nothing special about Angelo Dawkins, and I felt that way. I've followed Angelo Dawkins for the last 10 years that he's been in NXT. Like so many character transitions of Dawkins. And he's been with the company for almost 10 years now, right? And without Montez Ford, he doesn't make the main roster. Without Montez Ford, he's probably cut by now, right? And this isn't to say that Angelo Dawkins is necessarily bad, but he's not over by himself. He would not be over by himself. The Street Profits gimmick got him over, and being with someone as athletic and had the charisma like Montez Ford definitely helped Angelo Dawkins, right? And I just, if Dawkins sort of gets removed from this group, I don't know what they have for him, which leads me to believe he's more than likely going to be cut from the company, which I don't want that for him. I want him to succeed because he's really good at what he does. I think in the baby face, like party, we're going to cheer with the crowd, we're going to party with the crowd. He plays that very well. I just think this new gimmick's tough for him. Not everyone could play, the extreme, serious heel group that this is. I think Montez Ford is good at it. But Dawkins is really struggling, I believe, at sort of the character work. And so that's some of the things that but the only way you can reconcile this result, is to have Lashley on Friday come out and say, guys, what the hell are we doing? We need to be winning these matches. Y'all ain't got that killer instinct in you. And right. And if y'all can't do it, I'm going to bring someone else in. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. I'm just not a big fan of the result. We think it Io versus Asuka versus Charlotte. And what I thought was a pretty decent triple threat match. Triple threat matches are always pretty. If it's not super energetic, and that's something else we'll talk about in a minute. If it's not like fast pace moving, then it a lot of times when you have more than two people, it gets a little awkward to watch. Triple threat matches have to be timed perfectly. They did a decent job at it. I'm just going to be completely honest with you, though. I'm completely thrown off of any story. If we're going to look at this through the lens of kayfabe, right, where I'm going to look at this through the lens of kayfabe, There's no, within the storyline, there's no reason in the world Charlotte Flair doesn't win this match, right? Presentation wise, Charlotte Flair is top tier, levels above the other two, right? And this may just be personal bias, but I don't dislike Asuka or Io, right? I'm not one of those people who be like, oh, they shouldn't be in WWE. They're very good at what they do. The problem with it is when you think from a business perspective, it's very hard to sell me, and if you can't sell me a more hardcore fan, I already know casual fans aren't buying it, right? Or at least not all of them, right? If you can't sell me on Asuka and Io, then I know that there's people who are a lot more casual than me who see them and like, nah, I'm out. Right? There's no reason in the world why Charlotte Flair doesn't win this match. Right? Other than outside interference, which is ultimately what we got, but Charlotte should have ran through Io and Asuka. Should have just ran through them before Bayley even got out there. I'm happy for Io. This definitely feels like a Triple H booking decision to let Io continue with the title. I don't necessarily know where this goes, right? Because there were two things that could have happened here, right? If you don't like my first idea of Jade coming in and beating Becky and you just want her on the main roster, well, Jade could have come out and Charlotte getting ready to set up a move, and Jade could have come out and surprise attacked Charlotte Flair, and that could have cost her the match, right? At the same time, Kairi Sane was predicted to show up. She's predicted to have signed to the WWE. She could have played a role in this. If she's really signed, she could have come in and attacked Io or Asuka and allowed the other one to win. And that sets up two stories moving forward. But nothing really happened, right? So we're 3/5 of the way through. We're 60% through your show, and no big moment in terms of, right, unless Carlito is your big moment, but nothing exciting has happened in the ring. This match was pretty good. I'll give it like a B-. Right now we're sitting at like a C+ pay-per-view though. We get 2 B- and a C+, and you average out around a C+, right? So you didn't do enough for me to sort of be like, yeah, this first 60% of this show, right? It didn't hit the way that it should have, right? And then you get a break, and then you get Pat McAfee to come out and plays to the crowd about how Indianapolis needs a WrestleMania. No, it doesn't. First off, logistically, Indianapolis is a clusterfuck to set up for a WrestleMania, because I don't think they have any outdoor stadiums. Lucas Oil Stadium, where the Colts play, I guess you can keep the dome open. I don't know if the dome actually opens though. But Lucas Oil Stadium, I'm looking up okay, so Lucas Oil does hold 70,000. So I guess you could hold it at Lucas Oil Stadium. The crowd, right? So Pat McAfee comes out there and talks about some cities get shows and the crowd sucks, blah, 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 but not Indian. No, Pat, the crowd sucked all night up to this point. The crowd sucked. It was quiet. You could tell a lot of them weren't into a lot of it. Now, let's be honest and let's be fair. Was this card really set up to make people excited? This card on paper reads like a normal TV show. That, right? Outside of Cena, LA Knight, and the Bloodline, that's a pay-per-view level match. Everything else read and felt on paper like it could have happened on Raw or SmackDown, especially Lashley in the LWO. That could have happened Friday, right? And so I can't blame the crowd if you're not going to give them. It is ultimately WWE's job to give them something to cheer for. And it does annoy me when people complain about the crowd without blaming WWE, because the crowd, when you're there, it is not your responsibility to cheer for entertainment you don't like. Right? If the show sucks, you have the right to say, hey, we're not going to cheer for this. And I'm not going to say this show sucked, but I'm also not going to sit here and be like, oh, the crowd is unjustified in being so quiet. If they don't like the match, they don't have to participate in cheering for what's going on. Ultimately, it is WWE's job and the entertainer's job to get you to cheer for something. And it was plainly obvious that they were there for one match. It was plainly obvious that the selling point of this pay-per-view was John Cena and LA Knight. That was painfully obvious. The loudest moments of the night, LA Knight, John Cena, Cody Rhodes. And Seth Rollins for a little bit while they were singing his song, but his match itself, the crowd was still, again, pretty mid, at least in my opinion. And so, yeah, the crowd sucked. That's WWE's fault, though, because they didn't give them anything to want to come to cheer for, right? They were obviously there for John Cena and LA Knight and Cody Rhodes. That's obviously what they were there for. None of them cared about Lashley and the LWO. For the most part, they didn't care about the women's triple threat, right? And so I could sit here and say the crowd sucked. That's obviously true, right? We could sit here and say, man, this crowd is pretty mid. But at the same time, two things can be true. That's WWE's fault for not giving them something to cheer for. Let's move on to the next match. Cena and LA Knight versus Jimmy Uso and Solo. You knew exactly what was going to happen here, right? This match should have main evented, though. I'm sorry. Especially with how the show ended, right? This match should have main evented the night. Honestly, that's how it should go. This match should have main evented. Again, wasn't anything all special in terms of action in the ring. But you do get a little bit of story. I think they're setting up John Cena versus Solo Sikoa. Where it happens, I have no idea. I also think they're setting up Roman Reigns versus LA Knight. Now, on my preview show, I think it was my preview show, or it would have been Wednesday's episode. Here recently, I stated that the rumor is John Cena versus Roman Reigns, and I talked about the idea of having Roman lose to Cena, but with a Rock distraction, setting up Cena to maybe drop the belt to someone like LA Knight. I don't think LA Knight is as a right. So I was thinking after this match, my thought was, do I bite and eat my words that I said that LA Knight isn't the star that everyone's trying to push him to be? Or right, I was sitting there and said, do I eat those words and admit that maybe he's the next star, or do I not? And I'm not completely convinced yet that LA Knight is the next big thing. What I will eat is I was there saying I don't think he's going to get pushed. He's obviously going to get a push. I don't think he's ready enough. I don't think he's on Roman Reigns' level. I just don't think he is. Sure, you could sell merch. Absolutely. That's fine. Sell your merchandise. But that doesn't mean that he's on Roman Reigns' level. If Roman Reigns got in a ring with LA Knight on a one-on-one match, you're not telling me LA Knight can beat Roman Reigns. There's nothing LA Knight does that Roman Reigns does at a worse rate than LA Knight. And so I'm just not sold that LA Knight's going to be the one to beat Roman Reigns. I would prefer Cena to beat him and then LA Knight to beat Cena, or it to be Solo versus Cena and Solo gets the belt back for the bloodline. And then, like, there's so many ways you could book that. That might be Wednesday's episode of how I would book the bloodline moving forward. I like to do that a lot, and I haven't done it in a while. But overall, I mean, outside of having the bloodline lose so that you can sort of build the suspense to Friday, what's Roman Reigns going to do? That's obviously what they're doing here. Cena and LA Knight get the rub over. Cena tries to lift LA Knight's arm, and he says, "No, I'm going to lift your arm." The traditional, booking that WWE does. This match was easily predictable. Now, that doesn't mean predictable doesn't mean bad, right? It was still a very entertaining match for the most part. And then you get the World Heavyweight Last Man Standing match, which was brutal like I thought it would be, and just like I figured. Now, I knew Shinsuke was not going to win. They're not putting the belt on Shinsuke. They're just not. They're not sold on Shinsuke Nakamura to be champion. I'm going to be honest with you, though. This continues to, every time I see a title defense from Seth Rollins with this championship, it doesn't feel on the same level of importance that Gunther has the IC title at. The IC title is the A championship on Raw. They should swap titles. Let Seth have that IC and be the work, because the Workman's Championship is the IC title. Gunther should be World Heavyweight Champion, because that's how much he's elevated the IC title, right? This match wasn't anything impressive. It just wasn't, right? It was the common last man standing sort of spots that we normally see in these last man standing matches, right? I just wasn't sold by it. And I was solely convinced with the fact that Judgment Day lost to the tag team champions. I was convinced there was going to be a cash in, and there wasn't. And so that's really the only disappointment for me of the whole night. It was, I was solely convinced there was going to be a cash in, and there wasn't. Unless while I'm recording this at the press conference, the cash in happened, which I highly doubt will happen. They wouldn't do that. Most people don't watch the press conferences. But this is your standard last man standing match, right? And your standard booking with Seth Rollins. I'm just so over Rollins, to be honest. I'm tired of him. And I need someone new to be champion already. I really need Damian Priest to cash in. Because I don't know. When else does he do? What's he going to do it at Crown Jewel? Is he going to do it at Survivor? Like when do you cash in? I don't know. I don't want another Money in the Bank where we get like this long holding of the briefcase, and then you have like Austin Theory cash in for the U.S. title. Like that's stupid to me. If we look at like the Money in the Bank winners, I'm trying to look up the last couple winners here. Let me look it up real quick because I don't know it offhand. So 2020 was Otis, then you had Big E, then you had Theory, and then you had Priest. Of those four, Big E's the only one at the moment to cash in and win the match. Excuse me. Big E's the only one to have cashed in and won the world title. What I do find interesting is on the Wikipedia here, Um, Theory and Damian Priest are listed as any men's championship, right? Which is true. They changed sort of who you can cash in on. But if you remember Otis's sort of failed run where he lost it to The Miz, and then I think The Miz failed to cash in, or maybe he got another world title. I don't actually remember that far back. And then you have Big E, who of course held it and won the world title. And then you had Theory, who failed to cash in on the U.S. title, right? And so Money in the Bank to me just has lost a lot of its meaning. And it's one of those things where it's one of these gimmicks like Extreme Rules that I just feel that we need to get rid of. If we, at least the whole paper, like get rid of the pay-per-view. And that's going to be something we'll talk Wednesday about. I'm going to do a segment on WWE's pay-per-view schedule. I came up with something that I think would work a lot better, and I want to get your guys' opinion on it. And so, yeah, Seth wins. We don't get a cash in. So we look at this overall show, and what do we accomplish from it? Absolutely nothing. We have new tag champions, and that's literally the only thing that changed. When we went into the show, so at 7:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 minute before the show started, to it ended at 10:53 p.m. Right, so within the 3-hour period, right? If you look at WWE, if you look at WWE, it's now midnight as I'm recording this sentence. It's now midnight here on the East Coast. If you look at WWE 4 hours ago, in that span of the last 4 hours, the only thing that's changed in WWE in the last 4 hours with this show is we have new tag team champions. And even that just isn't necessarily all that interesting. So I just like what did we accomplish? What do we accomplish? And so this is why every time I come into a pay-per-view prediction show, I always say I harness my expectations. I expect C+, and there's a reason why I expect C+. Because, right, if I'm taking a test and I expect to get a C+, and I get a B or I get an A, then hey, there's reason to celebrate, right? But if I get a C+, I got what I expected, right? The only way I leave disappointed is if I get a D or an F, right? Now, if WWE is running D or F shows, they don't need to be running shows. There's no way in that like the C+ is as low as I will rate a WWE show. Because if they're running D's or F's, they need to stop running shows. The worst WWE show you can think of is still a C+ or a C, maybe a C-, but you're never getting into D's. You're never getting a D, you're never getting a D-, you're never getting a D+, you're never getting an F, right, out of WWE. You're just not. And so I go as my lowest expectation for a WWE show is C or C+. I don't even think they can put on a C- show, right? And so if I expect a C or a C+ and I get a C or a C+, I go home content. I got what I expected. But if I get a B or an A or something in between that's above a C+, then I leave happy, right? Whereas if I expect a B and I get a C+, now I'm disappointed. If I expect an A and I get a C+, now I'm really disappointed. And if I expect an A and I get an A, well, okay, I got what I got what I expected, but I'll never leave happy. The problem with wrestling fans is they expect every show to be an A+, And when they expect an A plus and they get an A minus or a B, they leave angry because they didn't get what they expected. Y'all's expectations are too damn high. That's just the way that I view it. And so I expect a C plus every show. If you could give me the average WWE show, I'll leave that show content, understanding that more than likely I'll probably get a B minus or higher, and I'll leave happy. Right? I leave some room for me to leave more, like getting more than I expected. But if your expectation is always perfection, you're never going to be happy with what you get on the TV. And so I expected C plus. I'm gonna say we got B minus, C plus. I'm not rating the shows yet. Starting with Royal Rumble, I will rate the shows. I'm gonna create the We Too Deep scale over the next few months, and then when we get to Royal Rumble, starting 2024, I'll rate the pay-per-views on the We Too Deep scale. But yeah, we got like a B minus, C plus. It was the average show that, the worst that I thought that they could do, right? But it's still better than other wrestling shows that I've seen on other promotions, right? It wasn't bad. It just wasn't anything excellent. But I also think with the card that we had, what else were we expecting to get? So I'm happy with what we got. It wasn't anything exciting. I don't feel like I wasted the last 4 hours of my time. Granted, the last hour has been recording this, so I don't feel that I wasted 3 hours watching that show. I don't. I had a good time watching it. It was a good way to spend a Saturday night. And I got what I expected, right? And so I can't leave disappointed. I guess that means we wait 4 weeks and then we get Crown Jewel. That's if we get Crown Jewel. And I don't want to make this political. This is more of a human safety perspective. I don't know if you guys follow the news. But I don't know how you can't. It's all over I don't even follow anything like super political on Twitter that much, or like newsworthy, but like it's all over my Twitter timeline, because Twitter's broke it up to where it's like TikTok now, where they have a For You and the following, and it's default always on For You. And so I don't if you're on X or Twitter now, whatever you want to call it, and you haven't seen it, Palestine and Israel at war again. And again, we're not going to get into the debate of what side we should stand on. Personally, for me, I think America needs to let foreign countries deal with their own problems by themselves, right? And that's as much as I'll say on the issue. But when it comes to like WWE and human safety, WWE going to Saudi Arabia in the middle of a civil war, where the video going around Twitter is of a German girl who was kidnapped, raped, murdered, and paraded around the city with, and like, do you risk having fans go to to the Middle East, to a region that's going to be a hotbed of war? Do you risk your superstars' health, your fans' health, and safety? Like, that's more where my concern is. I don't care about the geopolitical politics of all. I don't care how you feel about it. Whichever side you're on, that's you. We're not going to talk politics here. But they showed the commercial for Saudi Arabia twice during the show, and all I could think of was, I don't know if it's the best time to go to fucking Saudi Arabia right now. The PR around that, to me, just doesn't play well. And so, I mean, I'm sure they'll still go. So yeah, we'll get ready for Crown Jewel. But that's going to be the discussion around this pay-per-view. every time they go to Saudi, it's blood money. So we got to prepare for this conversation. And you got to just wonder, like, you're going to a hotbed of people, a hotbed of what's going to be war between a country that we're allies with and we give active funding to versus a country that we have declared a terrorist organization, and Saudi Arabia sort of stuck in the middle of it. I just, again, I don't want to talk with the politics of all of that because we could go into that, but I really don't want to on this show. I just, PR wise, I don't know how good that would be for your brand to send American citizens into what could be a war-torn area within the next 4 weeks. By the time they get there, and I'm sure WWE's actively, looking into the situation. But I'm guaranteeing that they're still going over there. I'm just saying, if I was a WWE superstar, I'm boycotting going over there. I'm saying, look, if they're at war, I'm not going, because I'm not going to put myself at safety. Because I remember, what was it, 2-3 years ago, where they got stuck over there right? I can't imagine what that feels like. You're in a foreign country who culturally doesn't necessarily see eye to eye with us, and you can't get out, right? Personally, to me, I don't know if it makes the best business sense to continue to do the Saudi shows at this point. I don't think we need the Saudi shows anymore. To be completely honest, I think we could go to other countries, national or internationally, and that will pay. They won't pay as much, but that's a whole different conversation, right? That's a whole different conversation. But yeah, so that's where we're headed. We're headed to Crown Jewel, as far as we know. I expect a decent card for that. But ultimately, I think the build is going to be towards Survivor Series, and we just got that speed bump known as Crown Jewel in the way. Well, we'll probably get a bunch of whatever Saudi want type matches, right? And it will be the first Saudi show that we don't have Mansoor on the roster, so that'll be very interesting how that plays out. But yeah, let me know what you guys think or thought of, or what you think of this episode. What do you think of my review of it? And then what you thought itself of Fastlane. And other than that, thank y'all again for watching or listening. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment on it. The more comments we get, the more in the algorithm we get. I know a lot of people are sort of assume it's the like count, but it's actually the comment count from my understanding of the algorithm. And then if you're on any podcast network, click the follow or subscribe button, depending on what site you're listening on. If they have like notifications on the app, set those to where you can get them every time a new episode is posted. Leave a 5-star review if you can. If you love the show, give it a 5-star. If you hate the show, give it a 1 star. I don't want your 3 stars. I don't. And I say that a lot. To just sort of hit the hammer home. I want a 1 star or a 5-star, right? But I mean, if you're gonna leave me a 3-star, I'll take it. But I really don't want it, right? It's sort of my Achilles heel is a 3-star review. If you love the show, if you like it, exaggerate how much you like it, and give me a 5-star. If you're not the biggest fan of it, exaggerate how much you hate it and give it a 1 star, right? Because 3 stars don't tell me much of anything. 3 stars average, right? And so if you love it, let me know. If you hate it, let me know. Ultimately, thank you. If you want to join the Discord group that I'm in, of casual fans, and we sit and talk about all this stuff, links in the description of the episode. And final sort of housekeeping is Slapping Meat Wrestling podcast merchandise can be found at slappingmeatwrestling.com. Again, that's slappingmeatwrestling.com. For third time, slappingmeatwrestling.com. Thank you for watching and listening, and I will see you guys on Wednesday.
Brother, I'm going run a wild Hulk Hogan. If I like get some moment, I'll make sure it's an explosion. Cause lately I've been seeing stars trying to kick out on this chokehold, but it's no holds barred.